Of the Real Life Game Changers. Once again, we are in with a massive treat to get insight on how to start from nothing and build your way up through either a career or in business or even both. So we got multi-sector, multi-industry expert here. And now it's time to leverage on other people's mistakes, other people's successes, and other people's failures. Yeah, because that's what is a wise thing to do. Yeah, so if you are watching this live, put hashtag live. If you're watching it on the replay, put hashtag replay. Wherever it is you're listening, find a way to reach out, ask your questions, and we'll make sure that we both get back to you. So first of all, thank you so much for joining us here. Jeannette, it's actually going to be, something that's exciting because we're not only just talking about personal development, we're not just talking about property, we're talking about business, and this is what I love. So thank you for joining us.
Oh, you're welcome. Great to be here, Mark.
Yeah, so we want to hear a little bit of a backstory on you because I know you help business owners through that path that you have been through yourself. You have been a CEO. You have started from the bottom as well in the travel industry, and you've been managing teams as big as 1,700 with 350 million pound turnover, buying businesses, running businesses, advising businesses, being on the board of all of these businesses and being involved in all these different levels. So there is some great insight that we want to tap into. But just so people listening know a little bit more about you and can also know what questions to ask and fire across, just give us a little bit like what's the highlight reel of like how you start, what was it like growing up for you, how do you start out and how do you end up where you are now?
Yeah, sure. Well, thanks for having me on, Mark. So you can probably tell from my dulcet tones, I'm a Mancunian. Do not hold it against me. So I grew up in a very normal working class family, the youngest of three girls, actually, and the only one in my family to go to university. So way back in the 90s, I did an economics degree, actually, and came out with a first, which I was very chuffed about. And essentially, my first proper job was as a government economist, which sounds very boring being in the civil service, but it was a great job. But I jumped out of that into the travel industry and essentially started at the bottom as on the graduate scheme at Thomson Holidays back in the day, and then worked my way up to ultimately becoming the CEO of the travel division for a company called Saga. And I was also, prior to that, the managing director of the emerging markets for TUI. So I used to run by businesses in China, India, Russia and Ukraine. I set TUI up there actually as well. And then about 3 years ago, I decided to jump out of corporate life and become an entrepreneur myself. So I've now got a portfolio of my own businesses, one of which is property, another is mentoring to help people scale up their career or their business. And I also do a lot of advisory work, helping businesses with their strategy or buying or selling businesses. And then I've got my podcast, Brave, Bold, Brilliant, which is in the top 1.5% of all podcasts in the world. So all about overcoming challenges, risks, failures. So yeah, I'm a warts and all kind of person. What you see is what you get. But yeah, I believe anything is possible, to be honest, Mark. And we're all perfectly imperfect, aren't we?
Good. So anything is possible. Definitely want to tap into some of that. So just tell us briefly, like, this starting from the bottom and working your way up in the travel industry, like what was the driving doing that? And like, what were some of the obstacles?
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing is, first of all, find an industry, a role that you're going to love. In the travel industry, traveling is a great joy, different culture. So I was genuinely fascinated in it. But I think the driver for me was always wanting to kind of be a better version of myself. I didn't know what direction my career was going to go in, but I always knew that I wanted, make my parents proud and all that kind of stuff. And some of it probably comes from being in those humble beginnings and wanting to probably prove to myself, as well as my family and people around me that, I could climb that ladder and ultimately become the CEO of, within that FTSE 100, FTSE 250 kind of businesses. So yeah, not easy. Also being the woman in the boardroom, very often the only woman in the boardroom, with lots of male pale grey suits. Apologies if anyone is wearing a grey suit as they're watching now. Nothing wrong with that. But yeah, it was a different time back then. you know. So things are thankfully a bit more inclusive now in business, but yeah, there were some challenges along the way dealing with a very alpha male culture, shall we say, back in the day. Yeah.
So what, like, you know, someone who's wanting to, because you obviously made the step over to business,
Yeah.
you know, what would you say is the biggest challenge when, like, we're all trained to have this employee mindset? There's nothing wrong with being an employee, by the way, but when I say employee mindset, I mean, like, you know, just like very conditional, like, I'm going to work this many hours, I'm going to do this very specific thing, and in return you're going to give me that money, you know. Like, what's the difference between that and how people can make a step over to making more for themselves in life?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's about attitude to risk, actually, you know, because you can be in a very responsible job in the corporate world and dealing with, you know, multi-millions and doing huge deals, etc. But ultimately, you're not spending your own money. So therefore, yes, it comes with responsibility. But I think when you actually become an entrepreneur yourself, or you start your own business, you know, you're normally putting your own cash in, not always, but very often it can be, and therefore you've probably got a little bit more to lose, unless you're very early in your career and you've got nothing to lose, in which case you're probably a bit more ballsy. But I think when it's your own, you're solely responsible for all those decisions as a business owner, it's a different set of challenges, I would say. It can be quite lonely, I think, at times, and how do you surround yourself with the right people? And when things aren't going your way, how do you bounce back from it? Can be a bit harder, I think, sometimes as a business owner and an entrepreneur than it can be when you're in a large corporate organization with lots of structure and support around you.
So would you say, yeah, okay, so the structure and support, you know, that could probably come in different shapes and sizes, couldn't it? So you're saying that it's lonely. So did you feel lonely when you made that switch compared to when you're in the corporate?
I definitely took a while to sort of find my flow, shall I say, because I think when you're in a job, and you don't have to necessarily be in a very senior role, just if you're in a job, there's structure around you. You know, your diary is normally quite well managed. You've got meetings, you know, a lot of that is kind of organized for you or imposed upon you, whichever way you want to look at it. Whereas when you set out on your own, all of a sudden, you know, you're craving the freedom, choice, flexibility that being an entrepreneur gives you. But equally, you get there and you go, oh, it's just me and my phone and my laptop, and all that structure is gone. So I think it took me a while to kind of find my flow, really, and to actually put that a little bit of structure back in, still having the choice and flexibility that I wanted, but so that I actually had, you know, clear goals to move forward from, etc. And I think sometimes that's the challenge. It's almost like, where do you start? You've got too much freedom sometimes, and it's how do you create that balance for yourself?
So how key is structure to people's success?
Well, I think it depends on the kind of person you are. So I think for some people, it's absolutely essential. I mean, I think everyone should have some form of a plan. You know, it might only be a very simple plan or a light version of a plan, whether it's a business plan or a life plan. But I always think have a plan, because if you know roughly where you want to head, it's going to be a lot easier to get there. And then if you know that, you can then put the right structure around it, have the right team, etc. And also, I would say it depends on the stage that you're at, because when you're starting out, you know, you tend to get involved in all sorts of stuff. You know, you might be a solopreneur, you might be doing the marketing, you're the IT director, you're, you know, pricing or doing deals, you're doing everything. But as you start to grow, you will need to bring structure in, you need to bring people in to help you, a team, etc. So when you're starting up is very different to when you're scaling up. And I think in particular, when you're scaling up, you need more of that rigor and discipline around you, in my opinion.
Yeah, but I think, you know, or let me ask what you think. Like, is that why a lot of entrepreneurs, they start out and they'll get to this stage where there's so much chaos because they built all of whatever they built without any of that structure?
Yeah, it's a double-edged sword, isn't it? Because I think as an entrepreneur, you're creative, you come up with ideas, opportunities, you grab those opportunities. So you don't want to lose any, that. But I think sometimes you can get distracted by the shiny penny. Oh, this is great. Let's all go over here. Oh, no, I've got another deal here. And I think sometimes that can mean that things get started but not finished, or you can get distracted. But at the same time, you want to have your radar up so you've got flexibility, so you're not missing opportunities. But I do think you need to focus as well, because otherwise you can just find that you're spreading yourself too thinly and the wheels can quite easily come off the bus.
And, so a lot of people that are in the real life community, they invest in property and they're building property businesses. And some people, they come up to me, they're like, oh, Mark, I just want to quit my job. And like, I know in my head, it's like, it's not an easier switch to like you say, I've got to get up in the morning and I've got to be somewhere, or I've got to log on, or I've got to be seen to producing activity or whatever, to then, well, actually, I'm the boss. I'll decide, when I do it. But then it's not the same kind of like, oh, if I do this amount of work, I'll get paid. I mean, you could put the time in property investing, but that doesn't mean you're going to get paid, because it's paid based on results, which every job should be anyway. But hey, that's not really how it works sometimes, is it? So, like, what advice would you have for people around, if I got to go out there and I'm starting a property business, what are some things that I can put in place from the off?
Yeah, I mean, I think the first thing, be clear on what you're trying to achieve. So is it to, be able to leave your job and replace an income? And if so, what does that number look like? And what's the sort of time frame that you're looking to do it within? So, I think you need to understand what it is you're trying to achieve. I think also it's important to decide, where you're going to invest, what kind of strategy is going to be right for you. Because if you want to build a portfolio that's relatively hands off, you might decide to go down a buy to let approach, for example. If you want a higher cash flow in business, then you might decide to do serviced accommodation, but then the nature of it is different. So I think you also need to be quite clear when you're getting into property, how much of your time are you going to give to it, and how are you going to get to where you want to get to? Because I think sometimes, it's great to be educated, and, you need to get educated, go on the courses, do the training, absolutely. But you and I know, Mark, that real life and real property investing is not like a textbook, right? Things are going to go wrong. So
every time. That's our tagline. Like, it's not if it goes wrong, it's when it goes wrong.
Yeah, absolutely. So yes, educate yourself. Yes, do the training courses, but don't jump in too quick. I would say spend a little bit of time up front thinking about what it is you want to achieve, why you're doing it, what strategy, where you're going to invest. Are you doing it on your own? Are you building a massive business here that you're going to sell? Or is it just that you want a little nest egg and an extra stream of income coming in? Because the two are totally different, right? And it's not to say that things won't evolve, because they absolutely will, but at least start out with a bit of an idea, because you are investing at the end of the day, and things can go well and things will sometimes not go so well. And if you've not thought about it too much, then of course you might put yourself in a more risky position than you needed to have.
So, like, when you start working either with businesses or individuals who are running businesses and you're helping them, how many of them actually are clear on what they're doing it for?
Yeah, it's a mixed bag, Mark, to be honest, because a lot of people, if you say to someone, well, what's your reason why? What's your purpose in life? Why are you getting out of bed in the morning? You'll be surprised that a lot of people don't really know, or they struggle to answer that question. But the thing is, if you can get that clarity, you're going to be so much more effective. So, not everyone will know immediately, but I always say, if you don't know, just brainstorm all the things that you want in life. And it could be anything from the smaller things to big things, but get it out of your head, get it down on paper. And then from there, you will start to form a bit of a plan. Now, what I find is when in particular, when I mentor business leaders, in particular founder-led businesses, very often they've been successful because they are passionate about what they do. And they're good at it. And they've done a load of stuff. They've taken a load of action and they've got to a certain point, but maybe they've never had a business plan. Maybe they've never thought of it. But if they want to get to that next level, that's when you need to start bringing some of this stuff in, for sure. But if you can get a bit of clarity earlier on, it is going to save you time, heartache, and you're going to be much more effective if you can get that clarity, I would say.
So is this like, I want to know from you, like, well, what is it that does stop people or causes failure, or people don't get out the blocks, they don't get past a certain income barrier, they don't get past a certain, sales if they've started their own business? Like, what is the number one thing, and is this connected to it at all? Not being sure on what you want.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of society puts a lot of pressure on us, doesn't it? Very often there's expectations. People maybe do a job because it's what their parents wanted for them or what they thought they should be doing. So I think very often one of the blockers for people really following what they want to do is they're worried about failure. They're often worried about people judging them. They're worried maybe around fear of loss, whether it's, loss of income or losing money when they invest, etc. So I think there's a whole bunch of reasons which can stop people. But very often it's an inside job. It's actually ourselves that are putting those blockers in, because very often the reality is we might spend all this time worrying what other people think and what other people say. They're normally getting on with their own lives, and actually you've created this in your own mind, that actually people are so obsessed with what you're doing, whereas actually, I think row your own boat, decide where you're going, who's in that boat with you, and actually enjoy the ride a lot more. But I think those blockers of failure, loss, judgment are often the things that people means that they don't get going. Or if they get going, sometimes, it doesn't take very much to blow them off track. So I think we've got to always be working on ourselves, on our mindset, surrounding yourself with the right people, all of those things that but sometimes we don't always put into practice. So yeah, I think that's what I see anyway. But you've only got one life, right? And we don't know how long we've got. So what a shame to go to your grave with a list of regrets. That you could have done this, you could have followed a dream, you could have done property, but you didn't. What a shame. Better to give it a go and see what happens and learn from it. And if you fall flat on your face, oh well, never mind. Get up, learn from it, and do better next time.
Yeah.
No one,
Some people might say that's easier said than done, but we'll get to that. But like all of the things that you mentioned that stop people, none of them were people don't have enough skill.
No.
Yeah. So is that never a reason because you don't have the skills, you don't have the experience? That's not.
Well, listen, it depends what you're going in to do, doesn't it? If you're going to want to become a heart surgeon, well, you kind of need to have training for that. So I think it depends on your chosen field. But if you want to do something, well, then get yourself educated, or you build a team around you of experts that can fill the gaps that you have in your knowledge or in your experience. So yes, that can be a blocker. But if you want to do something and you have a time frame that you want to do it in, then you just need to take baby steps, don't you, every single day that's going to move you forward. And sometimes there might be a few steps back, but that's okay. Or it might be sideways a few times. But I think you can educate yourself. You can surround yourself with the right people. And high performing business leaders, CEOs, they don't have all the answers. They build brilliant teams. When I was in my corporate career, I didn't know absolutely everything about IT and marketing, and I wasn't an expert in those fields, but I had amazing people on my teams that did. And I was there to really, to focus on the big picture, the strategy, making the investment choices, empowering the team, bringing talent into the business, being close to the customer. So you can't all be good at everything. But so I don't think that has to be a blocker. But you do need to make sure you know enough, of course. But surround yourself with really smart people and don't be afraid of doing that.
Yeah. So like, is there any kind of business profession or position that doesn't require training?
Probably isn't really, is there? I mean, at some point, training, whether that's on the job or whether it's formal training or education, I think sometimes you just have to get going and learn as you go. Other times, you need more formal training that's more in depth, and it might take you, I don't know, 10 years to get qualified. So I think it depends, to be honest. But most roles require some level of either softer skills or practical experience as well.
Yeah. So in your experience, in the corporate sector, like how often did people train, and what training was people available?
Yeah, I mean, it tends to be quite structured, I would say, in that world, because in a large organization where you've got, at TUI, it was 60,000 employees. It's a massive business. So within that, you've got your frontline teams that are facing the customers day to day, whether that's on the phones or in a destination as reps, etc. And you've got your senior leaders who are sitting on the executive board and every sort of level in between. So what I tended to find in the corporate world was that there was more formalized development plans for people at every level. There would be performance reviews, at least twice a year. That would be linked to your objectives and the bonus that you achieved and remuneration. So it's much more structured. But yeah, development programs should be in place for everyone. And if the business isn't doing that for you, well, then I think you need to step in and take responsibility for your own career and your own development. So if you're an entrepreneur, work on your personal development, every day, every week, because there's always something to learn, isn't there? But that's your accountability. That's up to you to make sure that happens as well.
Yeah. I found that like training is massively misunderstood, or like what real education is, because traditionally, like what they call education, which is not where that word came from, but they kind of like cram in, where the real word education comes from, or the way you can like link it, you will arrive at the word educe, which actually means to draw out. So like, real training, or like onboarding was the training, which is, hey, learn about our products, learn about us, learn about their company, but how about to learn how to execute the job?
Yeah.
Was questionable. Like, it was like a cram in, but like, how do you know what's coming out? Information going in is one thing, coming back out is a completely different thing. Like I used to, like we say, like traditionally, this education that's out there, especially in the property industry, even in the business industry, a lot of people want to train coaches, a lot of people want to train, marketeers and all the rest of it. And it's like a gym induction. Like gym induction, you point at the machine and you say, well, that's how it's done, and you pull this and you do this weight and you do it in this form. Yeah, but like, do you get strong from doing that? The answer is obviously no. You've got to get, so like the way I started doing it in the IT industry was like, we were on the machine. So we actually trained every single day.
Yeah.
I mean, some board members, they were like, you guys are wacko, get to work. And I was like, yeah, okay, in a minute, right? Because like, we literally changed not just that company, but like that industry was like, who are these guys?
Yeah.
Because we were working on ourselves every day, on our confidence, and on what we were saying, on overcoming objections, how to handle the clients, and like all of this every day, not just when you first start, and then once you're okay, you can carry on. And that's what we then took into this, let's call it the outside world, outside of corporate, where people like actually pay to want to do training, because it's like, as Jim Rohn said, it's like education will make you a wage, where self-education, when you're choosing what it is area you want to go into, make your absolute fortune. Yeah. And obviously this is the path that a few people have taken as entrepreneurs and business leaders. So let's say we agree on that everyone must have then training. How, like when you're consulting these businesses, how orientated around training or business? I mean, they must be, or you wouldn't even be speaking to them if they didn't have interest in it as a mentor, as a consultant or whatever. But like, how orientated around training and like repetition and like role playing? Like, how much into that are they, or aren't they?
Yeah, I mean, I think again, it's a mixed bag, isn't it? You know, because some people naturally do this anyway. They have a curiosity for learning, whether that's education, whether it's just shadowing someone, whether it's, you know, listening to inspiring podcasts, whatever it is, it's all learning, right? And some people just naturally have that aptitude and they're like a sponge, right? So with those kind of leaders, I think you tend to find that it's just endemic in the organization to continually develop their teams and make an important, you know, increase in the performance that way. For other people, they need a bit of help with that, you know, because I think in particular when you're building a team, you know, a team isn't just a collection of individuals. A team wins together, right? And winning together is very, very different. And having a high performance attitude and having development at the heart of that, sometimes that takes a little bit of time to get that, you know, really embedded into a business. So I'd say that if you ask most business owners, they say they develop their people. But when you look at the reality, sometimes it's not as much as it should be or as much as they think it is, you know. So it is mixed. It really is mixed.
Is that because people are still stuck into this this mentality of like, got to be busy, got to like, you know, activity must be happening?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, there's a phrase, isn't there, Mark? Being a busy fool. You know, and I mean, one of the things that I often do with the people that I work with is I get them to have a really hard look at where they're spending their time and what are they spending it on. You know, how are they actually performing? How are they leading the business? You know, because the culture you set, the behaviors that you put into place yourself is what is seen and is what really filters down throughout the whole organization. And if you find that someone, you know, if you're micromanaging your team and sitting on their shoulders, that's not what you should be doing. You should be, you know, recruiting smart people, developing them, giving them clear direction and accountability, and then letting them get on with their job. You know, so I think when a business leader is focusing on the wrong things, you've got to be quite open-minded to having that feedback and being honest about where you're spending your time. Are you spending it on the right things, which is adding impact, which is driving the business forward, which is allocating resources, investments, dealing with your top clients? Or are you actually managing and not leading? Because the two are very different.
Absolutely. Worlds apart. Yeah, worlds apart. So like not all businesses, I know, but like it was a very common kind of feature, let's call it, of like, oh hey, we start at 9, but like you show up early, yeah, good stuff. You know, maybe even show up at 8 o'clock, 1 hour early. But let's say you finish at 5:30 and you start packing up at like 5:25. It's like, what are you doing? Where are you going?
Yeah.
Do you think this is still in society, or do you think things are massively changed?
I think again it depends on the business and the organization. I think there's a lot more flexibility around people working and doing. You know, I always thought, you know, with my team, I used to say I don't actually care the hours that you work. If you're delivering the results that you need to deliver in the right way that's congruent with our values and what we're trying to achieve as a team, if you can do that in a shorter working day, then good on you, crack on. You know, if it takes you longer and sometimes you've got to put a shift in and you're still there at 10 o'clock because you've got a deal to finish off, then so be it. You do what's needed to get the results. But I think that the working world has changed, you know, because we're much more flexible. We've got more hybrid working. Technology is a great facilitator. And, you know, if anything that's come out of the whole kind of pandemic and COVID is that I think business leaders have had to trust their teams a lot more. You know, they've had to allow people to work from home, and that is now much more of a sort of accepted cultural way of working and doing business, which I think is for the better. Absolutely.
For who?
Well, I think for the business and for the person, the whoever's on the team, you know.
So do you think like the quality of the leadership is well, let me ask a different question, because I suppose, do you think we've seen the effect of people having this type of remote working, and whether they know whether they're, you know, because if it was in an office before, right, you know, got the Hawkeye, and people probably feel more accountable, so they do more. But if they're at home and they got the TV and they got the kettle and they got the fridge, and you know, they got, oh, let me just, you know, go over here and take a little bit longer, like you say. I mean, I'm all for this results thing. For me, let's just put everyone on commission only. You know, that's I came up through a career on right through construction into sales into business, and obviously now business is a commission only job, isn't it? if you're running the show. So like, do you think we've seen the effect of whether people are really working or not?
Listen, I think it's hard, isn't it? Because there's a lot of people that have found it tough in that environment, you know, because they've been very used to going into the office or into their place of work and having the structure and the discipline and the social interaction. So for some people, and there's been all sorts of, you know, mental health challenges of working remotely and, you know, people feeling isolated, etc. So I'm not saying it's all rosy in the garden for everyone. And some people actually prefer a more structured approach, and that's fine. But I do think that for other people, they've been allowed to flourish and probably bring more of their authentic full self to work. You know, and we've seen, haven't we, you know, Zoom and technology or whatever it might be, Teams, you know, you've got the kids in the background, the bloody dog jumping on this thing, you know, you're probably seeing more of the real person, and you are literally taken into their homes, aren't you, through that kind of medium. And I think that has positives as well. But you've got to be able to, you know, set your team up for success. You have to be able to treat people as individuals. And if someone, you know, is more responsive working in a certain way than someone else, well, then actually being able to offer that, I think, is more to be flexible and allow people to flourish in an environment that's right for them. If you want to come in the office, great, come in the office. If that's how you perform better, brilliant. But actually, if you're trying to juggle childcare and other challenges, whatever they may be, and a more flexible way of working is better for you, then I think we need to be able to offer options for people. In a way that's still going to get the results. I mean, ultimately, you know, you've got to deliver, haven't you? You have to deliver. I mean, you know, it's not a charity you're working for, but you want for people to be fulfilled, motivated, supported, have the right metrics in place, know what good looks like, and where there are challenges, be there as an open-minded leader, and, you know, to actually be a go-to, so you can have proper conversations and real conversations. That's what you need.
In my observation, there's a real big lag time. So like, it takes, like, depending on the size of the business, the mechanics of it, could take years for them to go bust because they're not operating efficiently. But for that many years, it's been dying, you know, and it's been slowly chipping away. That's why I asked you if you feel that there's been the effect or not. But what was interesting, and I don't know how I would have reacted if I was, because let's face it, a lot of people were forced to start working that way. In 2018, when we started, you know, creating and generating a few different businesses in property and in training and this kind of area, yeah, we were already doing it. You know, the way I saw it, I thought, you know, why have someone commute 1 hour? You know, use that 2 hours a day just to crack on and do whatever you want to do and make it happen. And having the background in like my latter part of construction, because in the beginning I was like day rate paying, but then one day I discovered price work. So like, you get paid based on how many blocks you lay or how many bricks you lay. That was like jackpot for me. That really got, you know, a rocket up my ass. Yeah. So from that day, I was always like results orientated. Like the quicker I can do it, the better I can do it. You know, like the more I can either ask for, or the more I will get paid. But then a lot of people, they're not like that. They're like, hey, you know, I'd rather just know that I'm getting a paycheck, and, you know, I'll deliver the best job I can anyway. Like, I mean, if someone's going to deliver the best job they can, surely they would want to be rewarded for it, and to have like a profit share or some kind of bonus, some kind of percentage, some kind of commission, which I still think that people veer away from.
Well, I think it depends. It depends, Mark, because if you can easily measure, you know, sales is an obvious area, isn't it? You know, it's very metric based. But if your role is more of a part of a team where you don't have a direct, you know, impact on the result that's easily measured, then it's harder to reward people in that way, you know. So then it's maybe more of a collective bonus. So I think you have to look at the context. Context is everything, isn't it? It depends what sector you're in, which part of the business, as to how you're going to reward people, measure people. You know, but yeah, there's no one size fits all. But I tell you
That's
what,
where the magic of leadership comes in, because you look at any sporting team, you can't say I can only pay, you know, this player or that player. It's like, hey, listen, we're going to win together. Whatever the result is, it was the entirety of the team.
Yeah.
So you're dead right. Like, I did start out thinking, well, you know, sales is an easy one. We can always pay commission based on percentage and X, Y, and Z. But then when I started like developing businesses, growing businesses, my thought was like, how can I have the accountant on commission? You know, how can I have the receptionist on commission? Yeah. And it doesn't mean have to mean like commission, but like, how can we say, look, when we perform, we all get paid.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like that was all, and any business that I'm in, I'm always, and people will tell you I'm pretty generous actually. Yeah. When it comes to this thing, because I want it to be like your business in this business. You know, because there's a lot of places, and I'm sure you came across it, or you'd still be there if you didn't come across it. There's places that are limiting.
Yeah, but you know, money's one thing, and bonuses, and everyone wants to be fairly rewarded, don't they? You know, you want to be recognized, you want to be valued, and you want to ultimately, you know, have a financial reward for your efforts, 100%. But it's not just about that. It isn't just about that, you know, recognizing people. Sometimes it's the softer stuff that actually is more motivating. You know, I mean, I come from the travel industry. You know, classic example would be around, you know, overseas trips, where you're seeing hoteliers, you're a bit of business, but you're also got a bit of, you know, couple of days on the beach, downtime, you know, having educational trips overseas, a big part of what actually motivates people in the travel industry, because it's not very well paid, in particular at a junior level. So I think it's not just about money. There's other ways to recognize people as well, and to reward performance, you know?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And I suppose what I missed out is like, the first component is you've got to put someone in a position of what they love doing. You know, a question that people find somewhat weird when I interview them is like, I'll be like, if you could do something for the rest of your life and you love it so much you would do it for free, what would that be? Because I want to know what they would do for free, because I want to put them in that position. I want to see if we've got something, because then they've made it, we've made it, and you know, all is good. Yeah, crazy moves, difficult hit rate sometimes, because people are not used to it. They're used to this, like you say, so much a different type of structure, because we have structure, but it's all around results. Yeah, but I want to move on to some quick fire questions now, just see what can people do now. So like, what do you think? Well, let me ask you this first, quick fire questions. What do you think of the current state of the economy or the marketplace?
I think it's been an absolute bloody terrible scenario with the whole mini budget that's just put the whole cat among the pigeons in a position that we didn't need to be in. And unfortunately, that's impacting interest rates, it's impacting exchange rates, it's impacting confidence, consumer confidence. And ultimately, there's a lot of average people who are just trying to earn a decent crust for their families that unfortunately have been affected. So I think it's a great shame. But I'm hopeful for some more stability to come that's going to allow, a bit of a bounce back from where it's been. But yeah, it's been tough for a lot of people.
So where's the stability going to come from?
Well, I think the stability is going to come from being able to have more clarity around. So interest rate is a good one, isn't it? People at the minute are going, oh, is it going to go up? What's it going to go up by? And I think once some of those policies are made around taxation, around interest rates, then the markets, the capital markets, can respond accordingly. Stability of exchange rate. We had parity with the dollar a couple of weeks ago. I mean, that was unheard of. Right. And that impacts everything. It impacts the cost of goods. It impacts so many different things. And when that's volatile, as a business owner, as a business leader, it's very difficult to predict. And even just your average person that's, looking after their family, to be able to predict how much their household bills is going to be is difficult. Right. So I think it comes from solid policies, and it comes from, a consistent period of whether it's interest rates or exchange rates being at a certain level that makes it easier to predict.
So what would you say is the biggest opportunity for people to take advantage of to kind of combat inflation, interest rates, cost of mortgage payments going up, cost of bills, all these things?
Yeah, I mean, listen, I'm a big believer that out of every adversity, opportunities will come. So if you take property, a lot of people, there's probably going to be fewer investors in the market, I would say, because a lot of people will be having to dispose of maybe their portfolios. A standard buy-to-let property that was cash flowing before may not be cash flowing positively now. So you're going to have some landlords wanting to exit the market. You'll have more properties coming onto the market and probably a reduction in demand. So you should start to see a correction in prices. You should. Now, I've not got a crystal ball and who knows what will happen. But if you are in a position where you've got an appetite to invest and you're liquid, that could be a great time to actually grow a portfolio in the right way, because prices should come down. The market's been way too overheated, right, for the last few years. So that's just one example. When it comes to kind of businesses, there will always be winners and losers in business, won't there?
Why is that?
Why is it? Well, I guess, it depends on the sector, doesn't it? So if you've got a very traditional business that's got a lot of kind of legacy systems and a lot of fat in it, they're not very agile, it's like trying to turn a tanker, then those kind of businesses might find it harder to adapt and change. Right. But I mean, if you look at the number of, say, businesses that have started up, Amazon businesses, people have been able to start businesses because of technology and be, from their dining room tables, so I think it depends on the sector, but you're always going to have winners and losers. You're always going to have people that are more risk averse, that are maybe more nervous in certain situations, and you will always have people that are more entrepreneurial and prepared to jump in when other people are being fearful. So partly it's down to mindset and individual sort of liquidity position, if you like, and some of it is down to the structure of a business as to how able are they to kind of, adapt and change, really.
So it's not like football, like if someone's going to win, someone has to lose.
No, I don't think so. I think it evolves. I think there's lots of examples of businesses that have been more innovative and are actually stronger for them. There's lots of businesses through this difficult period that have had to take a good hard look at their cost base, make those hard decisions, cut their cloth accordingly, and have come out with slicker processes, maybe new products, different ways of serving their customers. So it doesn't have to be a win-lose. But you will always have some that thrive and some that don't. That's just normal life, isn't it? It's normal business.
So is it fair to say that the ones that are winning are the ones that are like, are doing the right things, and the ones that are losing are the ones that are not doing the right things then?
I think it depends on the size of the business, doesn't it, as well, and on your financial position. I would definitely say the businesses which have creative problem solving are more agile and more tech driven and possibly have multiple income streams will have a level of protection versus a business which is very traditional, maybe is serving one type of client or one type of product, and is maybe harder to adapt.
So would we say that those people they're not doing the right things though?
I'm not saying they're not doing the right thing. I think their set of circumstances are different. and they've been dealt. You've got a different set of cards, and it's how you play those cards that's important. You know, if you're running a $5 billion business with heavy infrastructure behind you, it's impossible to change as fast as, you know, an agile business that is turning over, you know, 10 million quid. It's just different.
For sure, but you could argue they got more resources.
Possibly, might also have more debt.
Yeah, well, debt's good. We like debt.
There's good and bad debt.
we don't want to invest in companies that don't have any debt because they're not really serious about growing. Is my strategy anyway. Okay, so that's awesome. So are we saying that, like, because you like helping people, you know, whether it's a big tank of 5 billion with lots of infrastructure or whether it's a 10 million pound company, do you think that with the right people going in there, they could turn it around or do whatever's required and get the company doing the right things? Do you think that's possible for every single company?
I don't think it's possible for necessarily every single company, but I do think.
What would stop a company then, like, if it's not possible?
Well, so if you're exposed to lots of external shocks that you can't directly control, then that could stop a company. So, you know, travel industry is a great example. You know, you can't control the exchange rates, and a lot of the, you know, it's closing of barriers, people not being able to travel. That's out of your control, some of those things. And therefore, you know, if you're an airline and you've got lots of debt, it's very difficult to be able to navigate when all of a sudden you have zero revenue overnight. So in that situation, you could be the best CEO and the best team possible, but your structure and the external environment in your industry could make it more challenging. But what I would say is that people are at the heart of every successful business. And, you know, sometimes it's not just the people, but if you stand a far better chance if you've got talented individuals that working as a team together, and you've got a really great leader that backs the team, and you know exactly where you're heading, and you're not shying away from those tough decisions. You've got a far higher chance of success, definitely.
So let's say some external factor comes, which we know kind of some of the things you mentioned and did happen. Does that now expose a company that previously either got lazy or wasn't doing the right things or could have been better?
It can do in certain situations. Yeah, it can do. But equally, you know, if you've, like you said about debt earlier, there's the companies that have debt are good. Well, yes, it could be if you're in a growth market, in a growth sector, that you've got debt to fund your growth. But if that debt is fundamentally not structured in the right way, and then you have an external shock, maybe that debt wasn't so sensible. You know,
you mean if people bought debt on because of lack of sales, for example?
Maybe, or it's just a longer term utilization of an asset. You know, if you invest in some heavy infrastructure, some capital projects, you know, it might take 10 to 15 years for those to actually pay back, because they're big projects of multi-billions. So what I'm saying is that every situation is unique, isn't it? Actually, but what you need to be able to do is be really ruthless and diagnostic about where the opportunities are, where the risks are. Don't shy away from making the tough decisions. Bring the right people into the business. Have a clear plan where you're going, and make sure that you're liquid. You've got the cash position to be able to protect you when there are tough times.
So what's your definition of liquid? Because a lot of people, they talk about being liquid or getting it to be liquid because there's going to be some cheap properties and lots of opportunity to take advantage of. What's your definition of being liquid?
Well, you need to have available cash that you can deploy when the opportunities come up. Now, that could be, if you're a startup, that could be your own money. It could be someone else's money. It could be a revolving credit facility. It could be an angel investor. There's multiple ways to raise finance. So I think it's probably having a number of those in your toolkit, if you like, depending on how aggressive you are and how much you want to grow. But yeah, you've got to be able to have capital that you can access and deploy pretty quickly.
Good. I like it. I like you said, because some people sitting there, well, I don't have any cash, so that counts me out then of any opportunity. But like you said, it doesn't have to be your own money. And this is a big thing that, like, I even for a long time was, let's call it, I was a victim. I wasn't being responsible for my own, actions, thinking, oh, poor me, I don't have any money. Like, to build business, to invest in property, you don't have to start with any money. And in fact, anyone who is switched on upstairs, I would say that you would continue to not always use your own money, because even if you got 1 million, then go raise some more and do a £5 million deal. If you got 5 million, then go raise some more and do a £50 million deal. Like, why not? Like, the only reason you wouldn't is because, like you said before, you want to play safe, or the security. But in my experience, and I told you just before this, I've experienced another one of those times in those phases of the business cycle where I was like, did I take my foot off the gas or something? Did I take my foot off the accelerator? And like, then loads of things come all at once. And that's the life of the entrepreneur. One day everything is hunky dory and it's the best, thing since sliced bread. And then the next day it's like, oh, in a second, what's changed? How can it be so crazy right now? And I think people hear these stories, and they look at the market, they look out the window, and they say, oh, this is the way the world is. But I think there's lots of opportunity, and I love these type of questions. And this is what we do in our board meetings, with partners. And this is what we've always done, which is we sit there and we had those hard conversations. We ask each other those hard questions. Well, like, okay, well, if that happened, how would you handle that? How would you deal with that? And so I think some people shut that down, but like, I've enjoyed asking these questions. We do have to start wrapping it up right now. I've got a couple more questions I want to ask you, but before I ask you those questions, I just want to say, what awesome insight. I think the one thing I want to say actually is, like, anybody listening to this, wherever you're listening to this, listen to it over and over and over again, because like the repetition, like the second time you're going to hear it slightly different. And I think there's a lot of wisdom here, and insight and experience, which would be so difficult to get out within the time that we've got here. So thank you so much for coming on. Been brilliant to have you. Golden nuggets everywhere. I think everybody listening in would agree. So thank you so much for coming on.
Oh, you're welcome. My pleasure, Mark.
Yeah. So here are a couple of questions I want to ask you before you go. And the first one is, like, let's say you've got a microphone right now. It translates to all of the different languages across this planet. You got 30 seconds to be able to, like, just put a message out there, just put your stamp on, or just get something out to the people. What is it?
So it is believe in yourself, because anything's possible, and it's by being brave and bold that you are going to unlock your brilliant.
Nice. Straight there, simple like that. Yeah, awesome. Last question. In our community we have this saying that we never want to let people forget that they must do the right thing for the right reason. Now, why is that?
Well, because life's all about choices, and you've only got one life, so you want to make it bloody count, don't you?
I love it. Nice and simple again. So we would like to add you to our awesome reel that we have, which is we have people like answering their question with their version. But then we have this saying that everybody says it. They say, you got to do the right thing for the right reason. And then the answer is because it's the only way to discover your true potential. So if I ask you again, will you be able to say that?
I will, yes.
Okay. So let's go for it. So we have this saying, and that is that you've got to do the right thing for the right reason. Why is that?
Because it's the only way to discover your true potential.
Yes, very good. Thank you for coming on. It's been an absolute pleasure. Make sure you share this, you tag this, you send this to your friends so you can get all the wisdom here from this wonderful expert who are joining us. Now, as Jeannette said, you've got to do the right thing for the right reason, because that is the only way you're going to discover your true potential.